Welcome everyone to the meeting of the District Level Building Advisory Committee. I'm Emily Figdor, Chair of the School Board and Co-Chair of this committee, along with Councillor Mark Dion, who's just joining us. I'm going to suggest, as we still have people joining us, that we consider our minutes from the last meeting at the end of this meeting. So we can get it right into the meat of this meeting. And hello, Councillor Dion. We're just getting started, and I was suggesting we're missing a few people, so I was suggesting holding off on considering the minutes until the end of the meeting, in the hopes that we'll have a few more committee members join us.
That's fine.
Excellent. So tonight we have an important conversation that is going to focus on the delays that we saw at reopening Longfellow and Presumpscot, and I want to get right into that conversation. So I think I'm handing it over first to the superintendent.
If you wanted to just, I can walk through the agenda as well, but you sort of teed up the first part. So
okay, yeah, our other agenda item is to update the where we're at on construction overall, and I think kind of reorienting these meetings around ensuring that we're getting really complete updates about the progress on the projects. So with that, I'm going to hand it to you, Superintendent.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Mark, I know that Emily Waugh usually joins us. Is she planning to join?
Yeah, she is not. And so we have another individual with us, Anthony Roy from Harriman. So that's the other individual that folks see on this call. So he's kind of stepping in for Emily tonight.
Great, because we, for the minutes and stuff like that, we are recording this and it's on, so you can use that also for the minutes if necessary. But yeah. So good evening, everyone. I also just want to take a moment to introduce Tamara Sweeney, who may or may not have, audio. So, I'm not sure if you'll hear her, but Tamara is the new assistant director of our facilities department. So she works directly with Steve Stilfen, who you all know, and is taking over an adapted role from what Doug Sherwood, who many of you remember well. So Tamara, welcome. This is our District Advisory Building Committee. This is the group that oversees the construction of the buildings for our future projects, and makes the recommendations to the school board for direction and things along those lines. So that's so welcome. So as Chair Figdor said, we're going to start the meeting by talking a little bit about what happened that delayed our start, and we've done some reflection with the team. I want to thank Emily and Mark for joining that conversation and helping us to sort of frame up what we believe happened and what we're doing to address it. And I think that I heard that from many of you over the days leading up to the opening of school, as it became clear that that it was going to be really hairy for us to be able to get school open, because we had turned over the buildings to teachers in a state that was just like not doable. So I want to start by saying that I think we all know that we've taken on a huge undertaking in doing this. We're doing 3 buildings at the same time, and they're occupied renovations, which, if you've ever lived through a renovation in your home, I had the unfortunate experience myself. It is, not a, it's never, it's never easy. So I do think that, we've known all along that this was incredibly challenging undertaking. And I couldn't be prouder of our team, Steve and his team, Mark, CHA. I think people on the construction side of this have given it their all. And I just am beyond grateful to our staff in our schools, because they have been incredible, and their grace through this process and their graciousness, even when things were as bleak as they were, are just remarkable and humbling. And I think it encourages all of us to bear down and to continue to figure out how we can do better. And our school teams were amazing, led by our principals and by all of their staff, in sort of dealing with this. And the community has been incredible as well, for something as significant as delaying the start of the school year. People just sort of said, rolled with it. I'm not going to say that there weren't folks who were unhappy, and clearly they had a reason to be unhappy. Everybody that lost the day of school there was inconvenienced in many ways, and just like the excitement of starting school, not being able to start alone is just a terrible thing that we're not proud of. And so I take complete responsibility for that. And at the end of the day, as superintendent, that comes with the territory. And that's why I think it was really important for us to do our sort of look into what happened, and continue to work to prevent things like this from happening again. So I wanted to start with that. And then we have a set of 3 slides that are sort of the analysis of what happened, and then also the steps that we're taking to prevent it from happening again. And before we do that, we have a slide that talks about the different roles of the folks in a construction project. I'm going to let Mark or Steve walk through that, just to make sure that you're able to sort of ask any questions and have us answer those. And so I don't know, Mark or Steve, who's going to take that slide.
Yeah, are we ready for that right now, Superintendent?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Right.
All right. So I forwarded past the agenda just to the slide that was referenced. And part of us doing kind of this review of what happened is really kind of understanding what the roles of each of the different parties involved in the construction oversight is. And so start with the basic. The contractor has a responsibility for completing the work per the contract and schedule. So there's 3 parts to the agreement with the contractor. One is the work that they're doing, how much we're asking them to do, and then when we ask them to do it, and then of course they get paid for it. That's the 3rd item. But so and they're responsible for the site. So they're responsible to maintain the site, and that means that they have to maintain separation of construction areas from non-construction areas. They have to maintain weather tightness of the building. And so that's also falls under their purview. The architect, our role in the construction phase is to visit the site to be aware of what's going on. We administer the contract. So our role is sort of in looking at what the contractor is responsible for, and contractually, and then making sure that they adhere to aspects of the contract. And the contract is clear about, our contract is clear about what areas of that we are responsible for. We have to keep the owner aware of any deviations from the contract document. So if the contract doesn't do what they're supposed to do, then we make the owner aware of it. It's important to understand that the relationship is a contract between the owner and the contractor, and we're kind of a third party that helps administer that. If there are design items that come up during the review by the city in issuing what we refer to as the certificate of occupancy. That's a formal process that means the city has signed off and recognizes that the facility is safer for the public to be in. So that's an important component of it. And so if there's anything that comes up that during that review that needs response from the design professionals, we respond to those items as well. The next responsibility is the OPM, the Owner's Project Manager, and that's CHA. And they're there to assist the owner in overseeing the contract with the contractor and to advise the owner. And so instead of being a third party, which the architect is neither aligned with the owner nor with the contractor, but we're seen as a neutral party to help administer the contract. But the owner's project manager is there to advocate and act on behalf of the owner. So it's a little different nuance to the roles that we play as well, and make recommendations and bring items to the owner for approval. So that's an important component of it. And then the last item is the owner, and that's the Portland Public Schools or the City of Portland. And it's responsible for owner-related items such as, in this case, during the review of kind of that transition from the construction to occupancy, related to items such as removing or moving of owner content. So if there's furniture that has to be put back in, that we haven't explicitly said is the contractor's responsibility, then that falls on the owner to make sure that that's moved back in. Cleaning of owner contents, that is not the responsibility of the contractor. So if the contractor has worked in an area and they contributed to creating dust or dirt, then they're responsible for that if they didn't protect the contents. And we tell them in the contract documents that if they're working in a space and there's items there, they need to cover that and protect it. And if they get something dirty, then they're responsible for that. If there are other items that fall outside of that contractual responsibility, then those fall to the owner to clean. And then installation of owner items and coordination of owner subcontractors. And so if there's vendors that the owner uses that are outside of the contract, the owner is responsible for that as well. I'll pause and I don't know, again, if Javier or Steve, if there are any other nuances to those definitions that you want to review.
Not to the definitions, but I think, when we segue, I will reference this a little bit. So, but I think just to pause and see if anybody has any questions or, comments about the roles. Aura, your hand is up.
Thanks, Superintendent. Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, I understand that this isn't explicitly laid out in the explanation of roles, but I guess since I'm guessing there was some sort of breakdown of communication that happened here, I guess it would help me to understand a little bit, Mark, in those roles, say in this instance of school, and I know we'll probably get into this more, but having
that's our next our next slide.
Okay.
We're going right there.
So that's going to get talked through. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and certainly if after that, after the next slides, or if you want to go back to that, we can circle back to these roles and responsibilities and the communication.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So don't move the slide, Mark, because I think I said I would reference it. I think the thing that became really clear to me through this process, and I think the slide illustrates that, is that there's none of these speaks vividly to who is ultimately responsible for making key decisions along that. And I think that, you can go to the next slide, Mark, that, the big, sort of takeaway for us as we did the analysis of the situation is that, the ownership decision was not clear. I think it was Councilor Dion that asked, who needed to make that call? And, we all wound up, close to the Scarecrow and the Wizard of Oz, just sort of pointing in, different directions. It wasn't like that, but that's hyperbole, but to illustrate the fact that we did not have a real clear understanding of, who should have said like, hey guys, this is not going to be ready to, to have teachers come in on Tuesday. There's work that needs to be done before they come in that, won't happen if we're working on all of these things until Monday, evening or well into Wednesday, as it turned out in, some schools. And so some of that was, delays in the actual project, things that would, fall on the contractor. But in general, and this is where, I started by saying I take responsibility for it. And you'll see that when we talk about the what are we doing about it, that, that it's moving to get to that level of clarity. And then I think the other sort of key aspect that we sort of uncovered as we were talking through the what happened is that, when you have a process where there's not clarity around who's making the decisions and people have different benchmarks for when you are, ready, you can get into these situations. And I think from the perspective of the construction folks, so I'm, including in that our team, Steve, but I'm also including Harriman, CHA, and definitely the contractors. You start thinking about, can I get a certificate of occupancy? Because that is the determinant of whether I'm allowed to bring people back into the building. But you can get and this is what happened to us. You can get a certificate of occupancy, but it doesn't mean that the next day people can start, eating in the kitchen. And so I think that is the sort of the wrong benchmark for us to use when we're thinking about we're going to bring teachers back into the school. It's like, when are we ready to welcome teachers and kids back into the school is the benchmark that we should be using. I want to just take a moment to say that the city has been incredible in supporting us through this process. And I know that, many of you recall that wasn't necessarily the way that things played out last year. But, this year, they were, there when we needed them. They gave us the flexibility when we needed it. And so I can't say enough about the city permitting folks and the inspections folks. They've been awesome partners in getting us to this level where we have certificates of occupancy for the buildings. But those are the key lessons that, I know I took away from it. And I think these are the points that we concluded as a result of our debrief. So can you go to the next slide, Mark? So then that leaves us with, okay, so what are we going to do so that these types of things, don't happen again? So, I think one of them is to simplify the oversight process. And I want to be very clear that I am not blaming CHA for the delay, right? So I do feel that we had an overly complex process where we did not have clear ownership for who was going to make the call to do what we need to do to get school ready for teachers and kids to come back. And so, as many of you know, we terminated our contract with CHA, the day, after we realized that we would not be able to open the school. And, again, we did it under a clause in the contract that is is a discretionary decision by the owner. So, CHA could have also made the same decision on their end. So it's, for convenience, it's not a finding of fault on either side. Because again, as I want to say, ultimately the responsibility sits with me, and we all could have done. And I think this is what we've taken away from this, is that we could have all done things differently to be able to start school on time for kids in, at Presumpscot and at Longfellow. So, simplifying it means that we have one less organization that is involved in making decisions. There's important work that CHA was doing that we will continue to do, and Steve and Terry and I are going to work on figuring out exactly how we do that, whether it's increasing the amount of time that we have our clerk of the works, which is working with Harriman to do some of this work, or whether it's some other subcontracting to do the project management aspects, because we obviously, as I said, we have 3 schools. That's a tremendous amount of work, and Steve and Tamara have broad responsibilities that extend beyond these projects. So we do need the dedicated resources, and we have the resources, the financial resources are built into the budget of the project to allow us to do that. So, exactly how we're going to do that is stuff that we're figuring out. The terms of our contract allow for a 30-day period with CHA. So we are still working through that transition with them. So, the clarifying ownership is, to me, the critical piece of this. And I think, shifting the way that we think about the projects as a construction project to it's a school project that involves the renovation of schools is the central sort of takeaway from this. And so we want to be very clear that the ownership for these decisions rests with district staff. And so that's Steve, that's me, that's Terry, and it's the principals. And we need to be in a place where we are, asking them, what do you need in order to be able to be ready to open school, and listen to that and use that as the barometer for whether we, move forward or, sort of hold off on doing things. So, that's front and center. What I want everybody, like if you, take the quiz at the end of today's meeting, it should be that the responsibility for these decisions doesn't sit with the owner's project manager, doesn't sit with Harriman. It sits with the superintendent and his staff. So that's, I want to make sure that everybody understands that. And so there are implications to that. And so part of the work that we need to do with Harriman and with the contractors going forward is to revisit the plans as they currently stand and look at what needs to be altered in order to be able to give ourselves the time that we need at these key transition points. And I think that, you all understand enough about the projects, that these are all phased renovations because they're, you've got kids, you're moving them from one place so that you can fix things. And so, we need to revisit that phasing and make sure that we are giving ourselves sufficient time, to either move, kids to different places or to, sort of do the cleaning and things along those lines that are necessary before kids are entering into the building. So that's work that we need to continue to do with Harriman and our contractors. And that's particularly important in the Longfellow and the Hvac projects because they have, a year and a few months still to go before they are, complete. Presumpscot is obviously, closer to completion. So there's not a ton of additional phasing that needs to happen, but there is some. And, so we need to revisit that as well. And then I think the other, piece that, a couple pieces that go with this. One is that, we need to do a better job of communicating with each other and to the public, and that's school staff, that's the broader school community about where we are and where these transition points happen. And I think, it sort of feeds into this last bullet and where I think you as a group play a very important part of this. And, and I know that in the sort of in the week around this delay, that I heard from many of you about, your concerns that these, in fact, that we had just had a meeting, a couple weeks before the beginning of school in which everything seemed to be, ready and we were gonna, just like, turn on the lights and we were gonna be there. And it turned out not to be that. And so I think for us to be, and we've had this conversation with Mark and his team about, there's tremendous positive things that are happening in these schools every month, every week, sometimes every day. And those should be celebrated and they should be highlighted, but there are also challenges ahead, and we need to do a better job of bringing those to you, the folks who are vested in these projects and committed to providing guidance and advice, and helping us to understand what communication we should be doing and things along those lines. So those are the key next steps that we came away from our sort of looking into the situation, and that we're committed to implementing going forward. And so I'll pause and see if anybody wants to, if Mark, Terry, Steve, if you want to add anything, if I missed anything, or you want to add, some additional nuance to any of that. But otherwise, I'd just love to, get a conversation, a dialogue going with the members of the advisory board.
I mean, one thing I'd add, Javier, is just what you said about the piece with being really hyper-focused on occupancy permits. I know as a principal last year, I was very focused on not getting in the way of that, and making sure we were getting everything done up until the last minute so that we could move on to the next phase. And you definitely, as a principal, can lose sight of, because this is new to you. Most principals have never done this before. And so you're listening to the professionals. I think that piece that you added of us working with the principals to make sure that it works for us, for staff and students before we move on to the next piece is really important.
Yeah. And I'll say, Terry transitioning into this job stayed and went to every construction meeting, because he had the context and knew, where we were and where we were going. And I think that, our principals are incredibly engaged in this, and, they do tend to defer to the professionals, because we don't know, as I said to the team, we're definitely not experts in construction, but we are experts in opening schools that are, conducive to learning for kids. And so it's important to understand that ultimately that is what we're, striving for, and, that we need to organize to that as opposed to, incredibly important and not easy to accomplish, benchmark, which is a certificate of occupancy.
I think that one other thing I'd suggest, Javier, is that the communication is obviously probably the most critical component of all this. Understand, it's enough to understand and monitor contractors' progress, but to communicate the goals with the contractor so they know what we're trying to do in terms of why we need to get the certificate of occupancy prior to the start of the school, so that you've got time to transition to learning ready.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Any questions, thoughts, reactions? Jess?
I'm wondering, 4-1, Deering's winning.
Awesome.
I'm wondering if it would make sense. I think one of the things that had been helpful, if we had known in August about what was behind, to put some kind of contingency plans in place for if school is not ready, what's the process for when decisions are made about opening, how's that communicated to families? Obviously, this is going to be an issue next summer for Longfellow and Reiki again. It could come up in the winter, depending on when the Presumpscot edition is ready. Is that something that we can work on as a group to have procedures in place to make sure we're giving families enough time, and to make sure we actually have objectives for what needs to be done? What does this need to look like within a week of when we're expecting, staff to come in, students to come in? Because I think it's, I know everybody's seen my emails, but to press the point that, school was delayed by a day, but only because teachers and building custodians were scrubbing floors and scrubbing windows and, cleaning off very dirty items that were poorly stored. So if that hadn't happened, school would have been delayed a lot longer than that.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. And, I think that is exactly what, that middle bullet about revisiting the phasing of the project so that we can organize with that, with getting kids and teachers into schools as the, as the fundamental, benchmark that we're striving for. And, and clearly being able to have you understand that, and then us using that to communicate to all of our staff, as well as the families that are affected by it is, that's what the fourth bullet is about. Emily, do you want to do the calling, or are you okay for me to do it? Or
I'm fine. Jay, go ahead.
Here, Figdor and Superintendent. So we've spent several minutes now talking about where we are as far as the school's opening, and I know that it can be frustrating. No doubt it's frustrating to teachers, educators, and to the kids. We're talking about one day, and so one question keeps coming to my mind as we spend time looking at this. Is this, and I really mean this, need the clarity on it, is this the purview of this committee? Because we don't seem, at least consistently, to, I sometimes wonder if we've sort of veered off of what the school board's charge was for this body. And I know that I'm an original member. I think Matt's an original member, maybe 3 or 4 years we've been on this. But I think it's important to put things in context and to have these meetings so that we know what the bottom line is. Where's the money? What's our money situation? Yes, this is something that could have been mitigated and remediated by the project manager. I'm always screaming about project management, but it seems like something more under the purview of maybe the school board, the superintendent's office, along with the builders there. I'm not sure we're here to address people being upset and grumbling about the school being dirty. That happens in construction sites, and no doubt it's irritating and it causes disruption to things. But as far as our purview goes, is this soundly within that purview? And if it is, I think I mentioned it, Javier, several months back. I never followed up on it. Maybe we could regroup at some point to revisit where the school board or the school board chair wants this committee to go. What are those bullet points? What are our purviews? Because it's been a few years now, and maybe we just need a temperature check on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, and I do. I do think in general that there isn't. If you look at these things, there isn't anything specifically for the DABC to do other than to be a sounding board and critical friend on some of the, moves that we are going to be making around the phasing of the rephasing of the projects, which could have financial implications and would definitely need to come through the DABC. I will, I'll gladly, send back out the committee charge. I think that's a good, thing after we've been at it for as long as we have and had as many transitions as we have. It's not a bad thing for the committee to just, sort of reground itself in that. And, generally, Jay, I will say, as we just dealt with some pretty significant issues that the DABC was instrumental. I mean, that was exactly what it's charged with, is to helping us to figure out. We had to make some financial decisions around contingencies, and the board gave a lot of weight to the recommendation from this group in making its decision to ultimately approve those contingency transfers. So that is front and center of the work that is. That's involved here. And I think the place where that, there's two places where it intersects. One is around the phasing and what are the financial implications of that. And then I think the other one is this provides a venue to have this conversation. There aren't like 4,000 people in the audience, but, this is being recorded. This is being, sent out, as part of our, it's on our website, all of that stuff. So, it does provide a venue to inform, the community more broadly. And to the extent that you guys have, and you heard Jess, who is also wearing a parent hat and, a staff hat, with some of her, concerns. And I think that comes from this group. And, I've been able to tap into Matthew on, specifics around the projects along the way. So there's a tremendous amount of knowledge and ownership for the projects in this group that is helpful to me. It's helpful to the staff as we do this work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Javier. And Matthew.
Yeah, just a couple things that I don't necessarily disagree with what Jay said about our role as far as what unraveled here. But the things I kind of felt that should be mentioned are number one so it was August 18th when we had our meeting last, and a pretty strong picture was painted of where things stand. And it was, seemingly all, I'm not going to call it rainbows and unicorns, but everything was positive and upbeat, and we got C of O's and things are, moving towards, school opening. And then it's, September 1st, the 30th and the 1st, the teachers are allowed back in the building, and they're seeing what they saw, and obviously are struggling with the reality of, what's in front of them. And it doesn't really come to the surface to this group until Jessica sends out an email, because she is that advocate, parent, and staff member that, was in Presumpscot, sort of recognizing these things. So what's troubling to me, I guess, is that it's seemingly, and sure, things were probably happening in the background, but we didn't know that until, Jessica pointed out that, Presumpscot's not going to be ready to open in time. So, that comes to the communication piece as being key. I think it, absolutely 100%. I just don't feel like we were, fully communicated to about, where things stood as we were getting closer and closer to the opening of school. And the other thing I'd add, you all saw my response to my email. I was frustrated that there was really no tangible response to Jessica's email and none really to mine, which is a little frustrating, because we shouldn't have to really be begging for some of this to come back to. I know, Javier, you expressed that it would be covered tonight, and I appreciated that, but I was just looking for some sort of a tangible response from here's what's happening, here's what's going on, so that we could know and understand. Because I run into people and they'll ask me what happened with these schools? Why didn't they open? And, I can't really give, a great answer, because I'm a little in the dark. And so it's sometimes embarrassing to not be able to, to be seen as a member of a building committee. And then you can't really respond because you're just as, pretty much as in the dark as anybody. And then I'll just finish by saying, I noticed that everything went smoothly at Reiki, I presume, because obviously Reiki started on time. The openings at Lyseth, when they happened, they were stressful, I think, for the staff and Lenore Williams at the time, and I'm sure it was stressful for the folks at Reiki to get everything open. But those seemingly went well, comparatively speaking. And obviously, it's the same contractor in both instances. So I'm just kind of curious as to what we can learn from what Hardy Pond has done right in these instances to get school open, and how they're seemingly doing things generally right enough to get school open in time.
Yeah, and I will, I'll say on the communication, I recognize that, and I do, I probably shouldn't say this, I'm not proud of it. I was, also just trying to figure out what was going on as those emails were coming in, and we made the call to not open school on Friday, late on Thursday, because we were committed to trying to do that. And so we were spending our time on that. I don't know, Mark or Steve, if you think that there's if it's a contractor issue, or, if it's more sort of just like that worked out great, and that's good. And as I think, Matthew, you said, so, it was stressful, and it wasn't. I mean, I spent a lot of time at Reiki that week with, sort of holding my breath, because it was still, a lot of construction going on at the same time. So I don't know, Mark, I saw you go.
Yeah, I think more, I don't think it's coincidence. I think that it's the same contractor. There's just a lot of different circumstances on each project that really weigh differently on the contractor's ability to turn things around and get things moved in and moved in ready. So I don't know if Steve has a different thought on that or not.
Well, if Steve's not going to say anything, I'll just weigh in just really quickly just to say that the one thing that comes to mind is allowing staff into the building a little sooner next summer so that they can get their bearings and they can understand at least the folks that are responsible for getting things moved back into place so that they can see what they're confronted with, because it seemed like it was a bit of a surprise, at least from what Jessica shared about Presumpscot coming into a situation that was probably in stark contrast to what they were expecting. And if they could have gotten into the building sooner, and you could have worked with Great Falls to get staff through there on an afternoon so that they could at least strategize as to how they were going to deal with the mounting pressure coming towards them. That's probably worth considering in the future too.
Yeah.
Aura?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate what Matthew just shared, and because I just wanted to share my perspective that I think this is exactly what the purview of this committee is. I mean, I understand Jay's point about it just being a day, but really I think about, us being responsible for accountability, and this being, a lot of chaos. I mean, being in these projects is chaos, period, right, for staff. But, staff coming into that, just as Matthew said, without the expectation of things being in that position, and then us, as just reiterating what Matthew said, it didn't feel good to be in this role and not feel like we had the, heads up about that. So I do appreciate the superintendent's, on the next steps, just really talking about that communication, and for us to really, be able to, in those transition points, have a little bit more, just preparation for the steps that are difficult. And I guess just it makes me think of just having a confidence in this process, which I think there are going to be ups and downs. And I think I hear, like the superintendent said, an incredible amount of grace from staff saying, we know that this is going to be worth it in the long run. Like, I hear that from folks. And I really think, they do have confidence that it's going to be for this great, we're going to really benefit in the long run, and our students and staff will. But I do think it goes a long way when, we are really doing our very best to communicate. And I know staff really expressed really gratitude of that, having that day, and just, having a chance to really feel ready for the following day. So I guess that's just my perspective, is that I think that really is our role as being, the communication in between, or at least the folks that have some of the information that people on the ground doing the work in the buildings don't always have. So those are my thoughts about that.
Thank you, Aura. Jessica?
I just wanted to speak to what Jay said, that, about this committee, and the reason that there are community members on this committee is for oversight and for advocacy, because taxpayers are spending more than $60 million. And I think that, we need to be making sure that our money is being spent and everybody's doing their job. And so I appreciate this presentation to make sure that that's what's happening.
Thanks, Jessica. Jay?
I'm glad Jessica is talking about finances now. I would like to ask a question about where we are with finances, other than the school. And I appreciate everyone's input. Again, I think a lot of these things might, as far as, school being ready, there being chaos. I'm sorry, there was chaos for one day. That might be something maybe our community committee could speak about, where we are represented by a lot of parents here on our committee, but there are, remember, other community members that are participating in this that come with it with unique perspectives that are here because we campaigned and helped to fund the efforts for this $62 million referendum when it's all said and done. So with that, I would like to know kind of, do we have a report tonight? Do we have a Gantt or a spreadsheet that shows kind of where we are, where our water line is, our watermark is, and where we are with the bottom line with each of the schools? Are we within that budget? Is there anything there that Harriman can provide us tonight?
I mean, we will, the last item on the agenda is to talk about where we are with the contingency. And I don't think you were here for the August meeting. But
I called in.
Yeah, we did a significant analysis during that meeting, so we can go and revisit that. I mean, a Gantt we don't have. I'm sure Mark does. I'm sure Steve does, but it's certainly not a part of the presentation today. But we can, provide that. Sort of the bottom line is that we are on budget. We are, we've had to make some shifts in the contingencies to be able to keep Longfellow on budget. And, you guys have been involved in every budget decision along the way. So ultimately, we're not doing a report of where we are today because, all of these, the costs are coming in on a monthly basis and we're paying things on a monthly basis, but we obviously have all of that information if you want to get to that level of detail. The bottom line for this group is that we are on budget and we are going to be able to deliver these 3 projects, we all have been a part of making adjustments along the way. Everything that is being done is not what everybody wanted. But every step of the way, this group, along with the board, along with our building level committees, have helped us to make those hard decisions that nobody wanted to make, but we've had to make.
Thank you, Javier.
Okay, so unless somebody else has something on this, let's move into the where we are with the project. Because again, as I said earlier, there's a lot to celebrate, but there's also challenges ahead. And so, I think on an ongoing basis, we're committed to doing more of talking through the challenges as well as telling you all the great things that have happened. And I think that that's, one of the reflections that we had is like, you thought on August 15th that everything was, full steam ahead. And then we found out there was significant amount of nuance to that. And so we want to get a little bit more nuanced. So Mark.
Very good. So we'll take it by school. Again, this is a construction update. So our format has been that we kind of give you a overview of progress. And then we've been providing images along those. And we've got a third slide that is, again, intended to provide a more balanced overview of what's going on. So there are identified challenges that we have faced, and we'll tune things up so that we're looking at challenges that we know we're facing as well. Sometimes those are harder because as you're going through construction, you don't know the challenges until you uncover them. But we'll do the best we can. And if anything we know of, we will, that is in the future, that we'll highlight that as well. And so for Longfellow, completed, there was a lot of work. Obviously, the summertime is the time that's the building is primarily unoccupied. So there's a lot of work that the contractor is responsible for during that phase. And so we completed phase 3, which is that area of the administration reorganization on Longfellow on the main level, which was the nurse's suite, the OTPT, principal's office, the math intervention, the K3 resource, social worker, and so some of those it's all on that. If you look at the plan, kind of on that right-hand side of the first level, as well as all spaces were fully abated prior to that work as well. Then we also had the primary entrance work was intended to be completed this summer. So that involved the main entrance, the new reception window, and the stairs and ramp. The ramp didn't get completed prior to the start of school. That was one thing. We'll report on that on the sort of challenge side of things. And also the doors, the entrance doors weren't in at the time that we began school as well. So those were items that fell outside of being completed this summer that were intended to be completed. For phase 4B right now that's underway is we did abatement and demolition of the kindergarten wing and the second floor resource room. So that's phase 4B that we've got underway as well. There were two classrooms 101 and 102 that were, the flooring was late to come in, and now I think as of I looked at a few pictures, and I think the flooring is installed now, and so those were delayed as well. As has been part of our conversation, the certificate of occupancy occurred on September 1st, and students returned on September 7th, and there was that 1-day delay. So I'll go to pictures in a minute here, but if there are any questions before I shift to the pictures. I guess I put the challenges first before the pictures. So the challenges included, there was a revised counter layout to the administration area. As the staff got in there and saw the layout, they preferred a different layout to the countertop. So that was a modification. We also modified the arrangement of the toilet that's inside of the nurse's suite. There's a structural condition that required us to reconfigure that. As I mentioned, the entrance ramp was not completed at the start of the school. We installed temporary guards and handrails, and then the front doors were delayed at the school opening as well. And those are obviously now in place.
Mark, can you go back?
Yeah, please.
Can you go back to the previous page real quick?
Yeah.
So I want to just point out the previous one, the one that.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
So, one of the, and I missed this when we were, going through the deck, is like those two rooms that, classrooms 101 and 102, that was a significant issue that delayed the reopening of Longfellow. So, I think it's, it's technically done now, but it wasn't done on time, and it, involved significant sort of moving in, moving out, and, different things that, that were significant. So I don't want to lose, sort of in the spirit of trying to, talk about the, the challenges ahead. That was a challenge that is now solved, but was a challenge ahead at the time that we opened the school. And I don't believe that people have moved in to those rooms yet. So I'm not 100% sure where we are with that.
Yeah, I think trying to think of the day I looked at the clerk report to see when they installed the flooring, but it's very, very recent.
Yeah.
And I can, that's a good point in terms of that should have been on the challenges slide as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. I'll go with the top row left to right, and then bottom row left to right. So top left is a view of the nurse's office, and so that shows the view towards the exterior side of the windows. If you turn slightly, you'll see the next image, which is the second from the left, and that shows you the new built-in casework and the nurse's desk in that room. The toilet room you can see to the left of that first image where the chair is against it. The third image from the left is the corridor getting ready for the start. So we've got the floor abated. We've got our rated ceiling in with our temporary lighting in there. So that has been installed and getting ready again for that, the start of the school year. The next image, on the upper right, is the addition to the back of the school, and so they're putting the sheathing on that. So that's what we can see there. You can see the window cuts, or the openings that have been cut into the sheathing for the window openings themselves. So that's underway. Going down to the lower row, we have the new social worker office moved in to in that image. The next image is the new cast concrete ramp and stairs, main entrance stairs, and you can see the temporary railings and guards that have been placed there. The next one is the new transaction window in the vestibule as you come in that main entrance. And the far right image is the new admin area and the countertops in that area. So that's the significant amount of the work and then represented in that that occurred over the summer. I'll pause. Okay. Certainly can go back. For Reiki, the work completed this summer included the completion of 5 of the kindergarten, pre-K and kindergarten rooms and toilets, and that's on that first level. And if you're looking at the plan, it's kind of on that upper right-hand corner of the plan. Completed this summer. Also, phase 3 included the sprinklers and life safety in the pool and the cafeteria, that side of the brickworks, and then enclosing the atrium, what the city determined to be an atrium, which is the space up above the library, and began construction of the administrative office areas and quarters on the first floor. And that was actually able to commence ahead of when we had originally planned to do that. So, and then ongoing right now is the construction that separates the first floor from the areas that we're going to be doing construction from the areas that are occupied now. So the areas that we are going to be doing construction in this phase are the 7 classrooms on the Clark Street side of the building. So we've kind of shifted halves of the building now. The occupancy permits for Reiki were granted verbally on the 17th for phase 2 and September 2nd for phase 3. And then we received them officially on September 6th for both of those phases. And then students returned to school on September 6th as scheduled. I'll shift to the images. So challenges, some of the challenges we uncovered during the work that was just mentioned in the area of the ceiling above the atrium or the library. We had some duct work that required us to lower the depth of the duct work in the structure. Some of the piping required us to lower the ceilings a little bit, so we had to create a little bit of a soffit. I think we added about 6 inches to the soffit and lowered the ceiling. Also, we had HVAC system that we had installed prior to this work, and there was challenges with its operation. It was paid for out of a separate contract, but we're working to resolve what that is. The ventilation it's now actually working to ventilate the space, which is great, and it's going to be integrated into the controls. In fact, I think it's already been integrated into the controls, and I think we still have a little bit of work on the heating coil for it. The other big area that is outside of the contract scope, which we're looking at investigating exactly what's causing some leaking from the plaza roof, and so that's that roof area above that used to be the pass-through above the brickworks with the ramps on each side. But there's the windows against that plaza that we've observed leaking for in those, and we believe that a lot of it has to do with the roof, the roof deck itself and the roofing assembly, and not with the window or the storefront assembly. And so we're doing some investigation to understand what that is. But that potentially is a hornet's nest, if you will. You kind of open it up and not sure exactly what we're going to find, but we'll report on findings as we go forward on that. challenges with that is that we have to be careful if there's leaks and we've already put new finishes or new work in. We don't want to damage new work, so we're being careful around that as well. So the kind of going the same pattern here, the view of the library from the second floor. That's the ceiling is in the lower state in this image. You can see some of the light fixtures that have been placed, the larger cylindrical light fixtures, and then there are the ceiling fixtures, light fixtures that are flush with the tiles as well. You can start to see some of the flooring down on that lower level as well. There's some arcs of color. And you can see from the lower level looking up what that looks like as you come into that library space from the first floor. The third from the left is the new administrative space. So you're looking out the windows in the front of the school. And so that's the corner window, if you will, that the administrative presence as you enter. So the entrance is just to the left of that space right there. And then you can see another of the administrative spaces on that far right. So that space is finished and punch list, if you will. On that one, going down to the lower left, we've got the amphitheater space. Again, that's part of that area, the central area that has that's adjacent to what's called the library. And so we converted some of those steps into just carpeted risers, and so they become a gathering spot. And then as you move to the next image, you can see we've upgraded the handrails on the stairs that go up inside of that space, and we've got some ventilation shafts that we've wrapped in wood, and so you can see that as well. And you can see a little bit of the ramp that brings you down from the entrance on the lower left-hand side of that second image, and so you can see the guardrail on that. So that ramps down from our main entrance, provides handicap accessibility. And then you can also see some of the openings to that second level in the walls above the library. The next image, the third one, is the new reception counter. So as you come in the entrance, that's where the reception counter now is located. And it looks like we've got the carpet tile behind it, but the main carpet hasn't been installed, or the flooring hasn't been installed in that area yet. And then you get in the area that we have completed, the new kindergarten classrooms, you can see those all set up with the furniture. And we've got the display board, video display board at the one wall, and you can see the door and windows out to the outside against the outer wall.
And I love these pictures. I have to get myself over to Reiki, the whole block, and see it. Just Mark, I'm sure you know this, but the leaking plaza roof has been a perennial issue at Reiki. So,
yeah, exactly. And as we were developing the scope, we were not aware of the cause of it, and if it was something that was just could be resolved through sealant, just sealing up some of the joints. And so right now, there's a whole effort to really understand what's going on with it. There's been changes to the roof structure over the years, and we're still not quite sure entirely where the leaking is being caused from. So,
okay,
but it's quite a transformation. If anyone's been in the Reiki school, it's pretty remarkable.
I will definitely get myself over there next week, and thank you so much. I really appreciate the highlighting the challenges. It's really good to understand what some of those are. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to note that Ben Grant, our newest member, has joined us.
Very good. So Presumpscot, the phase 2 completed this summer, included the renovation of the existing building, and that was no small feat. I may recall that we, in looking at the delay claims or the delay of the start of construction that we redid the schedule, and there was a lot of work in that existing building that occurred over a pretty short period of time, but included in, and we'll go through a graphic that shows us a little bit more detail as well, but included electrical data, mechanical systems, door hardware, sprinkler systems, and that's kind of throughout. Installed new finishes in the toilet rooms. We put new rubber flooring in the corridors, reconfigured the 5th grade classroom. So that one actually had a little bit more work in it than most of the classrooms did. We reconfigured the existing warming kitchen to create a new sensory room that used to exist in the area that we're now renovating for other administrative spaces. And then we reconfigured the existing main entry, which is part of the next phase, and that's a big part of what's going on at the front of the school is the addition and reconfiguration of the administration. The base layer of paving was completed at the main entrance drive and sidewalks, and the new sprinkler line was installed. So that water line that is separate from the domestic line that just serves the sprinkler, that caused a lot of issues. And I think we reported on some of those last time, but there's a lot of challenges with that water line installation and testing the water and making sure that it was ready to go. Ongoing right now is the new addition, as I just spoke of, including the big addition in the back, including the pre-K, kindergarten classrooms, art room, music rooms, toilets, cafeteria, and then the main lobby and the administration is going on right now. Just some of the dates: the occupancy was verbally granted on September 1st. Certificate of occupancy was not required because because of the extent of what we were doing for the renovations themselves, so that it didn't technically require that we were always occupying that phase. We never took that part of the school out of occupancy. So students returned to Presumpscot on September 7th, 1 day behind schedule. So, and Emily, I think if you want to call on Aura and Jessica.
Oh, yes, I didn't even see their hands. Aura, go ahead, please. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. And Mark, I just had to report my new 3rd grader came home telling me about the fancy bathrooms at Presumpscot. So that was clearly very noticeable to her. And the new floor, she said, Mom, you have to see the floors too. So, yeah, that just makes me excited, along with Emily St. Reiki and Longfellow. I'm so excited to see all of these huge changes, but just that those stuck out to my 3rd grader I thought was cool. So thanks for that update.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Aura. Jessica?
Speaking of bathrooms, I don't see the staff bathrooms on this slide, and they still seem to be a work in progress. All we have right now are the kids' bathrooms, so I'm just wondering what the timeline is for when there will actually be bathrooms for staff to use at Presumpscot.
Well, this is where I get to actually pick on Tony, who's here today, because he's actually the one overseeing work at Presumpscot. So, Tony, you have anything to report to Ms. Marino?
Yes, they're working on getting them ready for early next week. The tiling is being completed now, and it's just the fixture installation and painting that's left.
Great, thank you.
Is that on the next slide in challenges?
I don't think we have the staff toilets identified as part of the challenges that we were facing. So I know one of them is near the main entrance, and I don't know if the sequencing is off from what we originally anticipated. But I can understand the concerns of the faculty and not having, or staff not having toilet rooms. It's a big deal. Challenges that I mentioned already: the domestic water break during the sprinkler line installation required multiple tests, and that actually had a big impact in delaying some of the construction activities. The other big thing that I think we reported on our last meeting is, and that's, I don't think we're entirely complete yet with it, which is the existing roof is a product that we don't see very much anymore, but the integrity of the product was compromised in the past, and some cuts that were done during some work, and so in certain areas, and so we have assessed that and provided a solution to address it, and it's being addressed.
Aura?
Thanks. Oh, Mark, I just had a quick question about the main entrance. Is that anticipated to not be completed until the project is completed, or can you just remind us of the phasing of that piece?
Yeah, and again, this is where it's great that Tony can actually give you even probably more specificity than I could give you. So I'll pick on Tony again.
So the plan for that new entrance and the admin spaces surrounding that is for the end of October.
Okay.
So they're pushing really hard to get that wrapped up as soon as possible.
Thank you. It's great to see like the progress, like literally every day. It looks different, so I can see that that's moving along. Thanks for that update. That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty neat too. The front character of the building is entirely transformed. The new entrance. Just a clarification of what the scope of the work was in Presumpscot, because I think there was a comment that there's some work, but if you go into the rooms now, they don't look like there was anything done or very little done to them. And I think this is a slide that we had from back in August of 2020, just looking at the scope of the work and the areas of the school itself. And so the light gray areas are the very light renovation, and there's a description that follows what that is. And then the blue is the heavy renovations, that 5th grade classroom, the sensory room, the toilets, the fancy toilets, and that lobby and reconfigured area that was part of it was the nurse and the sensory area at one time, and then what is the 2 staff toilets and the workroom. So those were the heavy renovation areas, and then new construction is green. So the light area consisted of whole building upgrades, which were the PA system, new data, wiring, clocks, fire sprinkler system, fire alarms, security cameras, security and access control, signage, and outlets. And so a lot of it was infrastructure stuff that doesn't really sometimes show that there's much of an impact. I think the biggest impact that I think of that was accomplished is the sprinkler system in the building, and that is a huge deal to finally have that level of protection in the building. And so it also included new teaching walls with 2 whiteboards and a short throw projector. So those were identified as part of that light renovation. So when we think about what's getting accomplished in those classrooms, that was what we envisioned as the scope of the work. The pictures is a view of the corridor from in the upper left, and so that's all those new floors. Another view of it from another perspective there, and so just a bright, fresh new flooring, and nice to see all that. Some new ceilings in areas as well. You can see the addition. This is going back a few weeks, but you can see the new admin spaces on the front and the new roof form as well. The renovated ELL room to the far right on the upper row. And so that's been moved into. And then we've got the fancy restrooms on the lower left. We've got the renovated 5th grade classroom, the second image. Again, another shot of the ELL room, but looking toward the outside wall. And then another shot yet again of it on the far right of the lower row. You see the casework and the whiteboards and new ceilings and lighting and flooring as well. So then very quickly, a contingency update. So this was the recommendation. So just the board did approve it on September 6th. And so that occurred since we've last met. So, and that we had transferred the 178,000 from Reiki and the 227,800 from Presumpscot. So that's the next slides that show the contingency balances reflect these updates from that. So the Longfellow contingency funds original amount was 554,000 with the transfer of funds of 406,000. The revised contingency for Longfellow is 961,000. And then to date, we'd spent 453,000. So right now there's 500,000 remaining in the Longfellow. So we'll keep that updated every month with what the contingency balance is. The Reiki contingency, the original amount was 584,000. After the transfer, it's 405,000. At the end of August, that there is contingency funds spent to date were 75,000. So the remaining contingency is 330,000 right now for the Reiki project. For Presumpscot, the original contingency was 729,000. And the revised was 501,000. Spent 137,000 to date, leaving us with 364,000. So those give you kind of an update, and we'll, like I said, we'll track that on a monthly basis. So the next one is just our next steps, which is our meetings for the upcoming month. So we've got the BLAC meetings next week, and then our DABC and BLAC in the month of October.
Thank you so much, Mark. I wanted to note from the chat that Matthews asked about doing a tour of the 3 schools as the work is in progress, and Aura seconded the request. And I know it's something that we've talked about, but I do think it would be really valuable for us to actually be able to see the progress for ourselves. The pictures are great, and I do think give us a sense of what's of the progress and the work that's happened. But I think the full committee would have a much greater understanding of where we're at with each project if we were able to see them.
Yeah, how about if we talk offline, Emily and Mark, about how to get that scheduled. Is it like one day where everybody goes to all 3 schools, or do we do 3 different visits and stuff like that? And I think we just need to try to figure out how to do that. It obviously needs to be after hours when the kids are out, but schools are still being used after hours as well. So trying to figure out when to do that, all those things is so we can, if that makes sense, we can talk about it offline and try to figure it out.
That sounds great. Thank you, Javier. Okay, I don't want to forget that. Are there any questions before I want to make sure we get to the minutes from our last meeting and consider those? But if there are any last questions for Mark or the full team. Okay, then we, for those of you who joined us after 6, we delayed the minutes just in with recognition that people were joining us a little bit later. We do definitely have quorum now, so I want to go ahead and consider those minutes. They're in the agenda. Have folks had an opportunity to look at them? Okay. Are there any questions about the minutes? Okay. And any discussion or changes that need to be made? I'm not seeing anyone flagging any issues. Okay. Is there a motion to approve our minutes from our last meeting? I should have the, sorry.
Matthew moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
So it's from August 18th. I'm sorry, I just didn't have the date in front of me. Okay, and second, so all in favor. Thank you very much, Jay. So Jay second, and just all in favor. Hands. Okay, and it looks to be unanimous. Matthew, that's you as well. Yeah. Okay.
And I think
Great.
Ben,
The minutes are.
Ben abstained. I believe he was. I did not see his hand.
I meant
Ben,
to
did you?
I intend. Yeah, I was at the last meeting, so I can vote on it. Sorry if I missed the right time to raise my hand.
My bad.
No, you're all good. My connection is in and out, so I apologize. I saw some hands and then not. Okay, so I think that is it for tonight. I want to, just to appreciate that this wasn't an easy conversation. I think we're going in the right, really going in the right direction, and appreciate that the superintendent and his team is stepping back and changing course as a result of the delays at Presumpscot and Longfellow. And I know, just again, hearing the construction updates, I really appreciate the kind of more full view, including the challenges at the project. So I look forward to that continued conversation. I appreciate everyone's contributions tonight. And that's it. So unless there's anything else, we have our meeting next month, and I really appreciate everyone's involvement tonight. Good night, folks.